that a question? Sorry, is that a question?
Could you stop interrupting the member and allow her to ask
No, not really.
question? Thank you.
Okay. The thing I would reflect on, Mr. Mayor, stop interrupting me. You interrupt all the women in this chamber when we speak.
For those young people watching, not all politicians are rude, like some of them, Susan Hall. Some are very polite and courteous.
And some answer questions.
Sadiq Khan is a sexist pig. And are we really just going to pretend that his religion has nothing to do with this? It's perhaps the first honest answer we've had from a Labour cabinet minister in months. Our once great United Kingdom is in such a perilous position that the north of England is close to burning to the ground. That admission from soon-to-be sacked Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy is actually not even as shocking as it should be. How much longer can the native English be ignored as we see our towns, cities and communities smashed by uncontrolled immigration, as beautiful local hotels are taken over by the terrorists, rapists and murderers invading our southern border via small boats in the Channel in record numbers? That's all while these new sickening figures just out today show that Britain will become a minority white country in just 40 years, as the Great Replacement goes from so-called conspiracy theory to demographic reality. So let me tell you what Nandy told the New Statesman. She said the north of England could go up in flames, adding, last summer when we had the horrendous murder of those young girls in Southport, there was already a real sense of tension in the north. People have watched their town centres falling apart. Their life has got harder over the last decade and a half. I don't remember a time, she says, when people worked this hard and had so little to show for it. All of that has fueled a real sense of anger about what people are being asked to put up with. And it all really came to a head around Southport because, you know, your children being safe, your community being a decent place to live. It was one of those absolute flashpoint moments, a moment of release. I don't mean the violent organised thuggery. People rejected that very strongly here, but people want to speak out, to be heard. Now, when Nandy was asked if it could happen again this summer, she replied, it could do. I mean, we are not complacent about it at all. But seriously, how can she say that? Labour under Slippery Starmer is the definition of complacent. Complacent about demographic change, complacent about illegal immigration, complacent about community cohesion spiralling out of control. I mean, it doesn't even exist. Complacent about law and order. And I will say it too, complacent about the vile misogyny being introduced by Islamic leaders who treat our women as second-class citizens. Now, if you're in any doubt that's what's happening, I want you to look at the treatment of women who are trying to hold London's failed Mayor Sadiq Khan to account.
The Mayor didn't have
Is that a question? Sorry, is that a question?
Could you stop interrupting the member and allow her to ask
not really.
question? Thank you.
Okay. The thing I would reflect on, Mr. Mayor, stop interrupting me. You interrupt all the women in this chamber when we speak.
For those young people watching, not all politicians are rude, like some of them, Susan Hall. Some are very polite and courteous.
And some answer questions, everybody in the audience.
Chair, I've got to say this in a way that doesn't appear patronising, but the naivety of the chair of TfL saying publicly a figure...
Asking for an estimate today, Mr Mayor, not a figure.
Well, I'm not giving you an estimate. I think just demonstrates why, with respect, Londoners were right to reject you twice when you stood to be mayor.
I have no further questions.
You spent more time thinking about how you could answer these questions and less ways you could try and insult me over a petty word choice, then you'd probably be in a better position for London.
What's that, pot kettle black?
I don't know if I've offended you in any way, but
Well,
thank you.
Pot kettle black, is it?
Assembly Member Best, have you finished?
She's finished, I can assure you that, Chair.
Will you join that campaign, yes or no?
As Assembly Best, you can write to the Mayor, and I'm sure we can answer them.
I have written, he hasn't responded. It's a yes or no question.
2030 is your own target. Is that something that you can now commit to when it comes to wood burning?
Assembly Member Bukhari,
that was not fair.
Can you answer the questions? I know it's obviously difficult for you if
More
the
than happy
actual
to.
question
Ask the question.
isn't written down.
Ask the question rather than a speech.
You need to make sure he answers the questions.
Let me just tell you. Assembly members ask questions, the mayor answers them. You don't interrupt him, please. He doesn't interrupt you when you ask questions. Hang on. And hang on.
Chair, it's very telling how angry you are at me for asking a simple question of the mayor when you weren't that angry at him using inflammatory language. You're supposed to chair these meetings, and it's frankly embarrassing.
Assembly members, I'm the chair, and you make comments through me. Do you hear that? Do you hear that? Do you hear that? No, I will chair it, and I'm chairing it.
Sadiq Khan is a sexist pig. And are we really just going to pretend that his religion has nothing to do with this? As World by Wolf reacted, could you imagine if a white Tory spoke to female politicians like Sadiq Khan does? The MSM never cover trans treatment of women because they'll have to ask the question of why he holds women in such low regard, and they won't like the answer. Pakistani and Islamic culture. So no wonder this post from Matt Goodwin has caused widespread panic last night, as he wrote, while Britons will become a minority by 2063, the foreign-born and their descendants will be a majority by 2079, and roughly 1 in 5 will follow Islam by the year 2100. Peter Whittle of the New Culture Forum put it simply, 1066 to 2066, death of a nation. Now, the details will horrify you, but no doubt if you express your horror, you'll still be dismissed by the usual suspects as far right or racist as per usual. But let me just take you through it. White British people will become a minority in the UK population within the next 40 years, a report has predicted. An analysis of migration, birth, and death rates up to the end of the 21st century predicts that white British people will decline from their current position as 73% of the population to 57% by 2050, before slipping into a minority by 2063. The research by Professor Matt Goodwin of Buckingham University suggests that by the end of the century, the white British share of the population, defined as people who do not have an immigrant parent, could have fallen to around a third, 33.7%. It projects a big rise in the proportion of the UK population comprising foreign-born and second-generation immigrants from below 20% to 33.5% within the next 5 years. By 2100, it predicts 6 in 10 people in the UK will either not have been born in the UK or will have at least one immigrant parent. The Muslim population, which currently stands at 7%, is estimated to increase to more than 1 in 10 within the next 25 years and account for 1 in 5 of all people in the UK by the end of the century. Professor Goodwin, an honorary professor at Kent University, said the research based on Office for National Statistics and census data raised, quote, profound questions about the capacity of the UK state to both absorb and manage the scale of demographic change. In his report, he said the findings were certain to spark a considerable degree of anxiety, concern, and political opposition among many voters who favoured lowering immigration and slowing the pace of change in order to maintain the symbols, traditions, cultures, and way of life of the traditional majority group. Matt Goodwin said, their concerns will need to be recognised, respected, and addressed if the UK is to avoid considerable political turbulence and polarisation in the years and decades ahead. He added, by the end of the current century, most of the people on these islands will not be able to trace their roots in this country back more than 1 or 2 generations. By the year 2100, based on our projections, 6 in 10 people in the UK will not have been born in the UK or born to 2 UK-born parents. This raises enormous questions about the capacity of our country and leaders to unify people around a shared sense of identity, values, way of life and culture and avoid the very real risk of us becoming what Sir Keir Starmer referred to in May as an island of strangers. In 2022, the census revealed London and Birmingham had become minority white British. The research compared ethnic identity comprising white British, other white groups such as Irish, Gypsy, Roma and other Europeans and non-white, religious identity of non-Muslim versus Muslim, and country of birth comparing UK-born with foreign-born. It projected populations forward by applying age and sex-specific fertility, mortality and migration rates to 2022 base population derived from the latest UK census data. So while the UK-born fertility rate was 1.39, it was 1.97 for foreign-born people. For Muslims, it was 2.35, and for non-Muslims, 1.54. The research forecasts that the white British share of the population will decline from 73% to 44% by the end of the year 2075, and to 33.7% by 2100. The non-white share will increase from 19.7% to 34.8% by 2050, 48.1% by the year 2075, and to 59.3% by 2100. The analysis suggested that the white population, including both white British and white other, would become a minority of the population in the year 2079. The share of the UK population that is non-Muslim will gradually fall from 93% to 80%. So I wanted to go through these figures specifically because they are stark. They are shocking. Maybe it's going to finally get the mainstream politicians, including Reform UK, to talk about the risks of demographic change and why we actually need to have that discussion if there's going to be anything left to fight for. So how do we claim our country back? Well, new Reform UK MP Sarah Pochin today suggested the Burka should be banned, sparking this response from Slippery Starmer. But first, the great thing about having you here on Outspoken is that you are awake to the massive problems with the mainstream media and the disturbing reality that it's impossible to trust the fact checkers who try and dictate the narrative. Now, given we love the news and want to stay informed but no longer believe so much of what the establishment gatekeepers tell us, it can leave us in quite a predicament, right? But I have the solution. It's called Ground News, and it's the best way to stay informed and cut through media bias and manipulative narratives so you can get the facts for yourself. I actually have it on my phone and in my bookmarks online because it's become so essential to my daily life. And you can see for yourself at ground.news/outspoken. But before I reveal an amazing discount for you today, let me show you this incredible website and app in action. So we're going to use the shocking story that I'm so passionate about, the incarceration of the UK's political prisoner, the grieving mother and housewife Lucy Connolly, who remains behind bars after one tweet and had her appeal rejected, sparking outrage across the world. So you can see clearly in one place that 37 sources are covering this story. Ground News instantly shows how the story is being covered by the media, broken down by whether it leans left or right, illustrated by its bias distribution chart. Then if you scroll down, you can see every headline about the story along with the political bias and ownership of the publication. Interestingly and promisingly, 32% of the sources in this case are independent. Now, the left-wing media covered the story predictably, with Wales Online flagging her racial hatred tweet and the Daily Mirror going full-on political propaganda with the headline, Tory councillor's wife jailed for sending set fires to hotel, loses appeal bid. But the coverage on the right-leaning outfits was actually far more accurate, with Guido Fawkes tapping into the horror of Starmer backing the 31-month sentence for one tweet, and the Daily Express saying her incarceration is a moral stain on British justice system. The Spectator said simply she is in prison because of her politics, while my friend Alison Pearson spoke to Lucy in prison for the Daily Telegraph. My favourite feature is the blind spot feed. That surfaces upwards of 20 stories daily that receive the majority of coverage from one side of the political spectrum. So if you love the news like I do, the blind spot feed is the best way to get a balanced perspective on what's happening. Go to ground.news/outspoken or scan the QR code on screen if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble to subscribe today. And check this out. Today, you will get 40% off the same Vantage plan that I use for unlimited access. So that's ground.news/ news/outspoken. But now, back to the show.
Given the Prime Minister's desire to strengthen strategic alignment with our European neighbours, will he, in the interests of public safety, follow the lead of France, Denmark, Belgium and others and ban the burqa?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Can I welcome her to her place? But I'm not going to follow her down that line. But now she is here and safely in her place, perhaps she could tell her new party leader that his latest plan to bet £80 billion of unfunded tax cuts, he's no idea how he's going to pay for it, is Liz Truss all over again. Although, considering I think she was a Conservative member when Liz Truss was leader, she probably won't.
So again, just an absolute rejection of what I believe is a very sensible idea. I was struck today by a post on X that I wanted to share with you from Sarah Shobe, who wrote, "I genuinely don't understand how people can't see the rising level of racism directed at white people in the UK. These individuals openly criticise the fact that everything is white, are doing so while living in a predominantly white country. Now imagine the reverse if a white person said something similar while living in Pakistan, commenting on the number of brown people, the outcome would likely be tragic. We all know how Pakistani Christians are treated in Pakistan by the very same mindset. Frankly, these two individuals should be handed a one-way ticket to Pakistan, referring to two criminals. It's shocking that they're involved in UK politics at all. Their views are not only racist, but deeply delusional." Now, let me bring in my superstar panel, Father Calvin Robinson and Alex Phillips. And Alex Phillips, it's so lovely to have you alongside Father Calvin today because you've had a very big week and you posted on X, "I've been working towards this day for a long, long time," alongside some really incredible footage of you actually, which we can take a little look at, getting baptized. So Alex, talk me through what was going on here.
Phil Harris, a good friend of both Calvin and I, and that's my brother's wife, Becca, and she's been a huge part of my journey. So it's making me feel it brings so many emotions, but mainly pure joy, really, and happiness. But I've been a churchgoer for 4 years, and you always feel like a bit of a fraud going to church if you're not baptised. And I've wanted to do this for so long. And then in the end, we just had this last minute decision. Let's just do it. Let's get it done. And it's sort of a bit unorthodox and probably not the way Calvin would necessarily minister these things. But he knows Father Phil, so he knows that all the right words were said and it was all done properly. And it was just a beautiful, joyful occasion with my brother, his wife, my family, his wife's family, all the kids. Their kids were standing on the shore shouting, "Jesus, Jesus." And I honestly, it's making me tear up because it was just so important and so special to me.
Oh,
it brought me such joy to see that, Alex. It's wonderful. I've been praying for you for a long time. Obviously, you and I have had many conversations over the years about faith, and I know that you're good friends with my friend Father Phil, and he's a good spiritual advisor. So I'm so pleased that you've got him in your life, and he was there to bring you into the church. So welcome to the church. God bless you.
It's wonderful. Honestly, it really is. It's the best thing I've ever done. That day I'm going to remember forever and ever and ever. And you know, if anyone has sort of found religion in later life, found the calling of the Lord in later life, and then chose to be baptized, then they will know how it feels. They'll know the sort of the huge emotion and the significance of that moment. And I hope anybody sitting there who's like, "Oh, I'd love to believe in God. That looks nice. I wish I could." Do you know what? You can. It's so easy. Just, start going to church, start being inquisitive about the Bible. You push the door open just this little bit, just, a little prod in the right direction, and you often find it flies open. And what's behind it is amazing.
Oh, wow. What an amazing note to start the show. And we need it, don't we? Because I think one of the reasons people are feeling so hopeless, Alex, is because we see what's happening to our country. How shocking are these figures that Matt Goodwin has released today? And do you understand why Lisa Nandy is saying, look, the north of England could end up in flames this summer?
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't want to scare people even more, but I actually think Matt Goodwin's been rather small c conservative with his figures. I've heard other projections.
Yes.
But, demographic change to white Brit minority status as early, frankly, as 2050, if not even before then. We already have that in certain cities and towns around the UK. And we've been told, haven't we, that, oh, it's wonderful, we can all live in harmony of different creeds and races and belief systems and all get along because at the end of the day, we're all just one human race. Well, unfortunately, that's not how humans are wired up to be. Sociologically, tribally, biologically, it just isn't how we are. And equally, if you have people from such competing cultures where one culture extols the rights of women and the other wants to suppress the rights of women, then you're not going to ever see eye to eye and live in harmony. And Lisa Nandy is absolutely right. You look at what's going on in France at the moment, which has been massively underreported, rioting day after day after day, cars being burned, 600 arrests, a police officer in a coma, injuries in Paris, in Dax, around the country. And it's being perpetrated by North African men. Now, these aren't actually people who have come to the country recently. These are third generation. Their parents and grandparents came over in want for a better life. And everyone thought, well, great, when we bring people in from these different cultures, they will integrate. And by the time it gets to their kids and their grandkids, they're going to be just the same as us. It's gone the opposite direction. Very often, the offspring of immigrants end up more radical. And that seems to exponentially increase. And so we're now at risk. France is already on the cusp of forms of civil war and civil unrest and insurrection. We saw in Southport the same in Britain. We can see it in Sweden. You can see it in Germany. We are constantly now living in a tinderbox because there's been this ridiculous, now I think largely irreversible social experiment, an act of flagrant cultural vandalism that has created balkanized societies where nobody really gets along. There's no community. There's no glue that binds people together. And when that stuff disappears, guess what? You start having resentment, jealousy, competition, anger, bitterness. And I think that we're in an extremely precarious position across most of Europe now. We're in an extremely precarious position where just one small attack, one terror attack, one incident that people see as a result of this ridiculous, awful criminal social experiment that's been conducted now for about 3 decades, and people are going to want to go out and protest. And that is why, in my opinion, that the riots that happened in Southport were to some degree curated. We had those televised trials because the security services, the intelligence agencies know how febrile and fragile a situation we're living in. And so because they dare not go after minorities, instead they want to demonize, bully, silence, censor, intimidate and dissuade the white native population from actually going out protesting or raising a voice. And it's dreadful that it's come to this.
Of course, and they were able to blame those so-called riots on a far right, which we now know, according to the official reports, didn't even exist. Father Calvin Robertson, I want to specifically get you to talk about Sadiq Khan, though, because part of this demographic change means that we now have these Muslim leaders who are very open about their sectarian goals. And we've seen this week Nigel Farage, I think quite brilliantly, take on Anas Sarwar, the Labour leader in Scotland. But why is it that Sadiq Khan is able to treat women in a quite clearly sexist manner over many, many years, and no one talks about it because it's as if his faith gives him some sort of pass?
Well, it is his faith, it is his culture, it is his way of life, unfortunately. And we've reached a point in our society where we've said we have to accept people's cultures regardless of how they interact with our own. It may be too late to have an impact in that regard, in that we have shipped hordes of Mohammedans over to the United Kingdom who do have a very different outlook on life, a very different way of treating women, subjugating women, you might say. And we've got the diversity, inclusion, and equity values of we must treat all cultures equally and respect all cultures and faiths and not disparage any. And so how do those two things go hand in hand? Well, they don't. Either we are bold enough and courageous enough to say, actually, Islam is incompatible with Christianity. Islam is incompatible with the West, and therefore we want to rid the West of Islam. Or we embrace it and say, okay, well, the United Kingdom is clearly becoming predominantly Islamic. What shall we do about that? Shall we speak to the royal family about becoming the head of the Islamic Caliphate rather than the Church of England? Like, we need to make a decision. It is crunch time. And these demographic changes have been happening for a number of years. I believe everything that Alex said was spot on. We've been down this slippery slope for at least 3 decades now, and we're only just reaching the point of conversation. Right now, we're able to have conversations in the public that people like Tommy Robinson have been having for the last 20 years and being besmirched for it. Like, we have people like Piers Morgan finally waking up. We have mainstream people that go where the wind's blowing finally saying, okay, let's address Islam, let's address mass immigration. But it may already be too late, right? This data that Matt Goodwin's put out it is a conservative data, but we've seen data like this for years and years now. And in fact, I'm in a group chat with Matt Goodwin, and he said this morning, among the under 40s, it will be by 2050-ish, not 2060 something. Yeah. And so if the younger generation is already going to be predominantly Islamic or predominantly non-white by 2050, we have very little time to turn things around. The generation that's going to be having children over the next few years is the generation that shapes the nation. And so what do we do about that? Having conversations is not enough. It's far too late for conversations. We need to have mass deportation. We need to have repatriation. We need to work on changing something, doing something. If we don't, it's already done. The country's cooked. I'm sorry, I'm not being blackpilled or being despairing. It's just statistical, demographical fact.
Absolutely. And I totally agree with both of you that I believe while Matt Goodwin has done an absolutely brilliant job with this, the figures are conservative. I mean, it's going to be a heck of a lot less than 40 years. And that's why it is so urgent that action is taken immediately. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.